Welcome to the Exam Room Podcast, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hi, I'm the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll, and the question today is, can you make a delicious dessert without sugar and use only naturally sweetened fruit? I mean, yeah, and that goes for cakes, cupcakes, cheesecakes, cookies, whatever it is that you love to feast on. We've got the answer. We're going to show you how today with a very special guest, the one and only Chef AJ. My friends, this is the Exam Room Live, watched and downloaded in more than 150 countries around the world, and one of the most consumed nutrition podcasts anywhere on the planet today. And Sweet Indulgence is the name of a new book and the theme of the show today. It's not just the name of that book. I mean, this is actually our menu. We're talking about guilt-free sweet treats, sweetened only with fruit, guaranteed to be a hit no matter who is eating these things. Delicious, decadent, amazing, all of the superlatives you could possibly think of. And showing us how to do it is indeed our good friend, Chef AJ, whose new cookbook is out today. Sweet Indulgence, guilt-free treats, sweetened naturally with fruit. It is amazing. We're talking 150 of these amazing recipes are in there, all plant-based, all delicious, all planet when it comes to flavor. And we're going to learn how to do that today. And so we want to learn and raise our health and baking IQs. And if there's a question you have for Chef AJ, post it in the comments or in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can when we open the mailbag in just a little bit. But let's go ahead and welcome the woman of the hour, the author of Sweet Indulgence, Chef AJ. How you doing, Chef?
Hello, Chuck. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. Your podcast is the #1 podcast and my favorite. So I appreciate you having me on your birthday week so we can create some birthday desserts for you.
Oh, you were just as sweet as the treats in your book. Thank you so much. Man, I am pumped here. You know, you were nice enough to send me a copy of the book, and just flipping through here, my mind was blown, and I can't wait to learn how to do all of these things without using sugar. Does it surprise you that the average person eats about 100 pounds of added sugar every single year, AJ?
It doesn't, because I actually heard 150. So 100 is actually much more reasonable. And, the thing is, sugar isn't even a food. That's what's so mind blowing. But listen, I can't judge people for that, because up until I was 43, that's probably how much I ate. I used to be, not quite as heavy as you, but I was 60 or 70 pounds heavier. I was vegan, but I was starting every day with a Coke Slurpee. That's vegan, with 8 pumps of vanilla syrup. I was drinking Dr. Pepper big gulps all day long. And I was eating candy, cakes, cookies, pies, and ice cream. They were vegan, but they certainly weren't health promoting. Worse than that, I wasn't really eating any fruits, vegetables, whole grains, or legumes. And that's how I ended up 70 pounds heavier with the beginning of colon cancer. But I realized that most people, including myself, weren't willing to completely desert forever. So I needed to find a way that I could include these treats in my diet and still maintain optimal health and a desirable weight. And I think I've done that with this book.
Oh, I think that you have too. And there's so much of what you just said that resonates with me and millions of others. It really speaks to how addictive that refined white sugar can actually be. It gets its hooks in you and they just stay there, AJ.
Yeah. And, I don't think it's just white sugar. A lot of people don't realize that. I think flour, especially white flour, is just as addictive. And, people, of course, they love bread, they love pasta. I'm not saying those things are unhealthy for many people, but if you're a food addict, refined carbohydrates, whether they're in the form of sugar, flour, and alcohol, to your brain, it's the same thing. And it's just going to keep banging on it. When I used to eat white sugar, we had a grocery store near me called Ralph's in Southern California. And they would have these white cupcakes with white frosting and sprinkles, and they would come in a 6-pack. And that's how many I ate. And even though some of these desserts are rich, and not all of them are, actually 108 of the 157 recipes would be considered low fat, low calorie density for people following more of an Esselstyn, McDougall, Ornish, or Pritikin style program. Even when I ate the rich ones, when I was really working my way out of food addiction in January 6, 2003, which was the last day I had refined sugar, even when I would eat these desserts, because they were actual food, because dates actually are food with water and fiber, vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, antioxidants, and micronutrients, I could be satisfied with a reasonable sized piece because satiety mechanisms were activated by the actual food. When you eat sugar, flour, oil, which is basically most dessert recipes or cake or desserts made with animal products like cheesecakes made with dairy, which Dr. Barnard has talked at length about how addictive dairy is in so many of his books, there's no stopping. And so, I'm proud of this book, and I love that I can still include most of these recipes, even on a daily basis, and still be trim and still be healthy. And I hope you'll give them a try.
Yeah, you know what blows my mind is that when I go and I give these talks and share my story with people, I put up brain scans side by side of somebody using cocaine and somebody eating a donut, essentially. And the way that the brain reacts to them is identically. And so no wonder these sugary foods, the high fat foods, the refined foods that you're talking about, the ultra processed ones, they're so hard to kick. But you also said something that is so daggone true. It's like as you're transitioning over to this healthier way of eating, you found that something like a date that had been sweetened with the date still satisfies the sweet spot. So as somebody that struggled mightily with food addiction like me, I mean, let's just put it out there for the exam roomies. I mean, can you get the same satisfaction with the 157 recipes in this book as you would eating those cupcakes from Ralph's?
Right. So if somebody tries the recipe for cauliflower rice pudding, they're probably not going to get the same hit as if they make the one that Dr. Barnard loved, that he endorsed the book for, the forward for, the peanut butter chocolate cupcake. Because remember, calorie density matters. The more calorically concentrated the calories, the more dopamine is released. So you're going to get a bigger rush from these chocolate peanut butter desserts than you are from the low calorie density desserts. However, is a transition, I use these richer desserts like methadone because, see, my goal at first wasn't to be slim. My goal was to just get out of the clutches of refined sugar, for which I had been in 43 years. And it was devastating to me in so many ways. And so that's how I use the richer desserts. But the other thing I want people to consider is not everybody is vegan, but a lot of people I know have mixed families where they would like their husband and children to eat healthier. And you can use these desserts. They won't know that they're vegan, most of them, because I know that because I used to be the pastry chef at a restaurant in Los Angeles, and they didn't even know I was vegan until the day that I did my test day. When you apply for the job, you do a test day of baking. And they just loved it. They loved the German chocolate cake. They loved the peanut butter chocolate cheesecake. The fact that they were vegan were incidental. So I love how Dr. Barnard said to me right before I was going on Cupcake Wars, draw the people in with the desserts before you hit them over the head with kale. So I think there's a little something for everybody in this book.
I love that. That's so good. And it's so true. For those, and you're going to demonstrate one of the recipes from the book for us in just a little bit, but I got to ask, how difficult is it to take the sugar out of the baking process and replace it with the fruit? What are some changes that you had to get acclimated to?
Yeah. So I try to discuss that as much as possible in the book. So one thing, people always say, well, how much of this can I use for that? And I can't tell you recipe by recipe. What I can tell you right off the bat is that in any recipe that you have that calls for a liquid sweetener, another liquid sweetener can be substituted. So for example, if you already have a recipe that calls for, say, honey, maple syrup, agave, you can easily substitute the liquid date syrup 1-for-1. That is not going to change. I used to make my own date syrup back in the day because it wasn't always commercially available. Actually, it probably was in Middle Eastern markets, but I didn't know about that. But now it's so readily available on Amazon or Walmart, I can easily substitute date syrup for any liquid sweetener. Now, as far as dry sweeteners, for dry sweeteners, things have different density. So if you are somebody that bakes, you know that you can't just necessarily take a recipe that has powdered sugar and put in brown sugar. One is much heavier. It's not going to work, but you can get date sugar. The thing about date sugar is basically just dates that have been dried and ground up. And so it's very dense. That's why it doesn't dissolve in your coffee. So that's a little bit trickier. So what I did is I created these recipes from scratch I didn't go take my former recipes and try to convert them. For me, it was easier to create recipes just using primarily dates and date paste. I do use a little date syrup, but I don't use that as the primary sweetener for most of these recipes. And this is just something I figured out for myself. I mean, I can help people with recipes that they have. I think the bigger problem sometimes in the sweetener is actually the flour, especially with so many people wanting to be gluten-free and not use white flour. That to me is sometimes almost harder than the sugar. But one thing I will say is that if you believe in food addiction and what the experts say, that flour is as addictive as sugar for people with those sensitive brains, I don't include flour in this book except for in 2 of the 157 recipes. So that's another unique thing about this book.
I'm telling you're painting a picture that just reminds me so much that baking is very much like chemistry, and you have a
Yes.
science mind when it comes to cooking. But it seems like also it's kind of a fun trial and error process. How much patience should somebody have with themselves as they're learning how to cook this new way?
Well, here's the thing. If they get my book before August 31st, I have included as a thank you bonus, because my goal is to try to be a New York Times bestseller, and that is the cutoff date, 9 p.m. on Saturday, August 31st. I will send them as a thank you over $1,000 worth of bonuses, which includes a video of every single recipe so that it can walk them through that step by step in case they don't have a lot of experience in the kitchen. I also include a masterclass that I taught 2 years ago called the Sweet Indulgence Masterclass that sold for $497. That is 18 hours of instruction. I just want to show this picture in my book. I had a 7-year-old child 2 years ago named Luca take my dessert masterclass, and he was able to make the strawberry chocolate cheesecake. So I think even if you are a novice baker or dessert maker, if you get the book early in the bonuses, I think you'll have no trouble making any of the recipes.
All right. If a 7-year-old can do it, I'm feeling pretty confident that I may be able to master this in the kitchen as well. Does it matter where they get the book to be able to qualify for that bonus?
Not really. To me, how New York Times decides is elusive, but what I know is they want it to be from multiple sources. And so whatever your preferred way of shopping is, there's of course Amazon, which generally offers free shipping. I'm told they're a little bit behind and backed up. Maybe they didn't order enough. People that ordered at Walmart have already gotten it. There's always Target, there's Barnes and Noble, there's Bookshop. There is a local independent bookstore called A Seat at the Table that if they wish to have a personalized signed copy from me, they can get it there. And I can get you all those links. But it doesn't really matter where you get it. It just matters that you get it by August 31st to help me achieve my dream and for you to get those bonuses.
Absolutely. So we've got a couple of links in the show description and in the episode notes right now. One to your website, 2 to Amazon. And then, as AJ was just saying, hit up your local book retailer or Walmart. So many other retailers out there that carry books. That's where you can find this thing. Sweet Indulgence. All of this conversation and the fact that tomorrow is my birthday kind of has my mouth watering, and I see a lot of delicious ingredients laid out in front of you. So what do you want to make today, AJ?
So what I'm going to make is called Goodman's Peanut Chews. And this was actually the last, see, it's funny. I have my nice book and then I have another one that I use for in the kitchen. So I'm going to make these these are called Goodman Peanut Chews, and these are right here. And this was actually the last recipe that was in the book. And it was added for this reason. So we were testing recipes, and my sous chef, Rebecca Martinez, was helping me test recipes, and she was having some, not difficulty, but she was questioning about the melting of the chocolate process for some of the desserts, and maybe that it was written incorrectly. And so I decided to test the melting of the chocolate. And then I realized, well, I don't have anything to put it on. If I can't spread it on something, how am I going to know it's right? And I thought, well, what can I make really quickly just so I have something to spread it out? And I realized there's a recipe in my book called Peanut Bites, which is 2 ingredients, peanuts and dates, 3 if you add the vanilla bean powder. So I said, I'll just make some peanut bites and just spread it on there just to learn exactly what the ratio is and the spreadability and things like that. And so then, well, somebody had to eat it. So I took it to a potluck and people went nuts. And a few people said it reminded them of a candy called Goldenberg Peanut Chews. When I attended the University of Pennsylvania as a freshman in 1977, that is exactly when I went vegan, September 1st of that year. And this was one of my favorite candies. It happened to just incidentally be vegan. And because my name before I got married was Goodman, I call them Goodman Peanut Chews. They're fairly easy to make with few ingredients. And I try to keep the ingredients at a minimum in my books to make them as easy as possible. What you'll need is a silicone pan. I mean, you can use another pan if you want. You would then want to line it with parchment paper. But I love these silicone pans because nothing sticks. And since we're doing everything oil-free, these are just wonderful. And I've had these since 2003. They last forever, readily available at stores like Walmart and Joann's, and when Bath Beyond existed, certainly on Amazon. They come in pretty much every shape and size. This is a 9-inch square pan, and I've already made one recipe of the peanut chews because I like to make 2. I like to double it because I like the peanut part to be a little bit thicker so that the chocolate isn't overwhelming. And so what I'm going to do is in my food processor, my dry food processor, you want your food processor dry when you're processing things like nuts or seeds or grains, because that little bit of water that's left over, if you had just washed it, can actually impair the recipe by making it a little bit too wet, more like a pesto. S-blade, because it looks like the letter S. If you had to wash your food processor right away, the secret tip that we give in the book is just get your blow dryer. That's the quickest way to dry it. So I want a half a cup of peanuts for the topping. So in addition to the peanuts in the recipe, I have a half a cup more, and I'm going to take these out and reserve them. You don't have to top them with peanuts, but I just think it looks pretty. The other thing I've learned, especially since I live in a very large community of vegans, and we get together often for potlucks, is there's often people with a peanut or a nut allergy. And I find that even though we put those little pieces of paper with the ingredients, as the day progresses, they fall to the floor. So whenever I include nuts in a recipe, I always try to sprinkle it on top so that if there's a child or a person with an allergy, they will visually know that it has nuts. Whereas if it didn't have those nuts on top, they might think it's something else. And, that's the thing. Now, I give a lot of tips and tricks in the books for lowering the caloric density and the fat in all of these recipes. There are 157 recipes in the book, and actually 108 of them are low fat. So somebody following a McDougall, Ornish, Esselstyn, Pritikin style program could eat them. And I give tips and tricks to lower it even more. So let's say peanuts are just too high in fat or calories from you. You could substitute oats. Now, it's not going to have that strong peanutty flavor, but it's still going to be a delicious dessert. And oats are far lower in calorie density, and we know much lower in fat than nuts. But if you can enjoy peanuts, this is the traditional way to do it. So I'm just going to process these or pulse these just to get them, crunched up or chopped. And then I'm going to take out the half a cup that I'm going to need for the topping. And I'm going to place that aside. And now I'm going to continue to process this. I don't want to process it too long because, believe it or not, this is a very powerful food processor. It's called the Breville. I don't have an affiliation to the company, but I think it's the finest food processor I've ever used for home use. There were stronger ones in the restaurant called RoboCoupe that most people don't use for the home. But whatever food processor you use, try to get the biggest and best you can afford, because as I always say, you can process a smaller recipe in a large piece of equipment, but not the other way around. That's why when it comes to Instant Pots, I like the 8 or 10 quart. When it comes to air fryer, I like the Breville. I just like everything big. So we're going to just let this go a little bit longer.
And this is something that really, again, it looks like you're not doing anything that a 7-year-old couldn't do in the kitchen themselves. Beautiful.
Right. Just processing it into like a breadcrumb consistency. Now, you don't have to put in the vanilla powder. I just find that vanilla is just a lovely addition to almost every dessert. And I do prefer the pure vanilla bean powder to the extract for several reasons. It really is a truer, stronger, deeper, richer vanilla flavor if you like vanilla. I found extracts are very watered down versions. So vanilla extract generally contains 2 ingredients that I don't use and that I'm not allowed to use when I teach for, I teach for a lot of medical doctors, and in their programs, we cannot use alcohol, we cannot use sugar. So traditional vanilla extract has alcohol, and then the alcohol-free has sugar. So the vanilla bean powder is nothing but the ground up vanilla bean. And you can get that so many places, from Amazon to Dr. Furman's website. It is readily available. But you want to make sure it's pure vanilla bean powder. It's brown. Vanilla bean powder, which is like Cook's vanilla bean powder, is white, and it's processed, and it's dextrose. If we lived in a world where we could afford vanilla beans, which are the second most expensive spice in the world, they can be $10 a bean, we would use a vanilla bean for every recipe. But I do find that because it's dry, it's a better addition to my recipes than a liquid extract. But again, if you leave it out, the world will not come to an end. So I'll just quickly process that again to incorporate the vanilla bean powder.
And as you're grinding that up, is the number 1 most expensive spice still saffron?
It sure is. And I don't know why, because it's not my favorite spice. But anyway, so it's a good one though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my dates. And, somebody had posted, she calls for 2 pounds of medjool dates in a recipe. It's not true. I actually call for Deglet Nor dates in the book because they are the most cost effective. I can't vouch for every single person in every part of the world, but if you have a Costco by you, you can also buy them online. Costco sells organic deglet nor dates for $6.99 for 40 ounces. That comes to $2.79 a pound. And that's ridiculously cheap for pitted dates. So much cheaper than the Medjool. The Medjool are fabulous dates if you want to use them. And only one recipe actually asks you to use the Medjool. It's the desert date shake, but you can always substitute deglet nor. Deglet nors are smaller, so it's 2 to 3 deglet nor for every Medjool, and they're also drier. And actually, that is the reason I prefer them, not just because they're more cost effective, but because they're drier. It makes my recipes less sticky. So I like to use the deglet nor. Now, I did something that I probably shouldn't have. I should have cut each date in half, or at least squeezed it, because sometimes there's a pit even in pitted dates, but sometimes they get lucky. We'll see in a second. The fact that the food processor got all wonky leads me to believe that it found a date. But the good news is when it finds a date, it usually goes to the blade. So, you try to save time and then you end up not saving time because you got to go finagle it. But let's see what happened. I know there's a pit in there, because that's why it's slowing down. And it always embarrasses me, Costco. There we go. We found that. The good news is the pit almost always goes to the blade, so you can find it. But it's still better to try to get them out first because, it can damage the blade. So what we're going to do is we're going to let it run. And one of the reasons I love teaching hands-on classes, then the students can feel what I'm looking for, because I can't tell you how long to run it because everybody's food processor is different in terms of power. But basically, you're trying to get a ball to almost form so that the ingredients stick together.
And as that's blending up, I just wanted to let everyone know that we've posted a link to pick up a copy of Sweet Indulgence on Walmart's website, since Amazon appears to be back ordered right now. I want to make sure that you guys can all get your copies as soon as possible. So go ahead and check out the links for that. I just dropped it in the chat for you on Facebook and on YouTube.
Thank you. And consider Barnes & Noble a seat at the table. So that was 20 seconds. It's not quite ready. Even though I can form a ball, which is what I want, when I try to break it in half, it still crumbles. So I'm looking for an even break point. So I'm just going to go a little bit longer. It's almost there.
So it seems like this is just a feeling out kind of a process just to make sure that you got everything the right consistency, correct?
Right, because you want it to stick together. And if it doesn't stick together, what you can do is just add a few more dates. So here I have a ball, and you can eat this. This is the peanut bite. And if the ball breaks apart, nice and easy, it's ready. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pour it on top of the other peanut bite. And again, if you are somebody that likes more chocolate than peanut butter, just make one layer. I like to make two. So I'm just pressing it in on top, and then we're going to make a chocolate coating. So we're just going to press that in. Press, press, press. And you can just roll this into balls too. I never thought about it, but I could roll it into balls and hand dip each one. It's just a little bit more labor intensive. And, I do bring these to the potlucks we have. If you're anywhere near Northern California, consider joining my free meetup group, Healthy Living in Lincoln, because we get together once a month. And this is the kind of thing I bring. And believe it or not, I can cut 64 squares out of this. These are small bites, but usually I do 32 so that everybody can get some. So I've got this. And then if I had time, I would probably stick it in the freezer for a little bit to just get a little bit cold on top. But I'm going to go right ahead and make the topping. And I'm just going to place that aside and show you how to carefully melt chocolate. So what I have here is some 100% chocolate. Oh, wrong way. Okay. Now I'm going to show you some different kinds you can use. First, I'm going to turn my burner up. This is going to be easier on your stove because you'll have more control, especially if you have gas. And I'm going to add some unsweetened non-dairy milk. And you want to be very careful whenever you do something like melting chocolate or toasting nuts or seeds or coconut. Don't have the heat too high. Don't walk away. I'm having it on high right now just to get it started. So what I'm using is you guys might remember this, especially if you're as old as me, but this is what my mom always used because they didn't have a lot of sweetened chocolate back then. Unsweetened baker's chocolate. And this is 100% cacao. This is $1.88 at Walmart. So that's a great price. Actually, pretty much everything in my book you can find at Walmart, including the date syrup. And so this is a great brand. If you like this brand better, this is available at most grocery stores. It's the same thing. It's Ghirardelli. And if you want it a little bit sweeter, you can now get 100% date sweetened chocolate chips. These are available online and at stores like Whole Foods and Sprouts. These are going to be actually a lot more expensive than using the 100% chocolate. And so I'm just going to let this melt or heat up. I'm going to just get a spatula. I'll be right back.
That's a fancy little conduction oven. Well, I mean, that's a regular burner you got there, right?
Yeah, this is a regular burner. It's a camp stove because if I go over there, with the cameras and stuff, because actually doing it on a gas burner is a little bit easier. This is one of I have a section where I talk about tools, and I love this little spatula. This was $7 on Amazon. It's an offset spatula. They come in different sizes, but it's great for spreading because it's beveled, whereas when you use something flat, you can't get into it as much. But again, you don't have to have you don't have to have these tools. I would actually say that the most important tool to have to make the majority of recipes in this book would be a food processor. A lot of people say, well, I already have a Vitamix. Can I use that? Vitamixes and high-powered blenders are wonderful. But to make things like these types of crusts, I just don't think it would work as well. So I'm just slowly going to melt this chocolate in the plant-based milk of your choice. My preference is just unsweetened vanilla almond milk, but you do whatever non-dairy milk you like. And then after it's melted, I'm going to then stir in my date syrup, and that's going to be my topping. I'm going to work quickly, and then I'll sprinkle it with the nuts. I like to stick it in the freezer to chill up quickly. Also, I find that if I freeze it, not to rock solid, but just enough, then it's a lot easier for me to cut, especially into small pieces. So melting chocolate, if you've never done it, might be a learning curve, and you might want to consider doing it over a double boiler. A double boiler is something you can buy, but it's also simply taking a pot, filling it with boiling water, and then placing another pot on top so that it is less likely to scorch. Because the thing is once chocolate scorches or burns, you can't really recover. You'll have to start again. Some people like to melt chocolate in the microwave. I've never had a lot of consistency or good luck doing that. So this smells really good. And I've always preferred darker chocolate, even when I ate, sugar and stuff, I always liked the darker as opposed to milk chocolate. So this is more of a dark chocolate taste than a milk chocolate taste. But hey, if you don't mind eating sugar, if you're just ethical vegan, they make vegan milk chocolate now. So as it melts, I just kind of turn the heat down.
Yeah, let me jump in and ask you a question. It looks like once the melting process begins with chocolate, it really doesn't take a whole lot of time. So this is not something you want to put on the stove and walk away for a few minutes. You got to stay on top of it, right?
Absolutely, because like I say, it is so quick and it will burn. So I'm pretty much done. I just got one little piece in here that's a little bit harder, just trying to incorporate the non-dairy milk in it. So yeah, you can see I keep turning it down because especially with this is like a camp stove, a one burner camp stove, and this does heat up really, really quickly. So we've got this going on. And again, it's not like every recipe in the book is chocolate. I do tend to demonstrate the richer recipes when I'm doing broadcasts because that's what a lot of people, especially families, love. And I want people to know you can have decadent treats, even though they're vegan and without refined sugar. So now I'm going to add my date syrup. And I'm going to quickly stick this in. I don't need it on the heat anymore. I almost want to get rid of this.
Is date syrup something that might burn as well?
Yeah, I need. What I need is one of those little. Oh, here's something. I forgot to get my little hot plate. There we go. I guess you could probably put it on the counter. There we go. It's a lot easier to do this, guys, when you're not live broadcast and people watching you, but it's not that hard. So I'm going to get that all mixed up. I want to have my peanut chews ready to go. Let's see, make sure you can see these. There we go. Perfect. So I'm just going to stir it together on top so that if any falls off, it falls on the dessert. Stir, stir, stir. Yummy, yummy, yummy for my tummy, tummy.
And what kind of consistency are you looking for with that mixture?
Smooth. I'm looking for smooth and congruent. So it's all mixed in together. I know it's hard to see because this is a dark pan, you know, but it's ready to pour on. I mean, you can, I don't know if you can see how much quantity there is, but this is why I do prefer to do a double layer of peanuts. If you could also just cut the chocolate in half and do one layer, but then it's going to be a real thin peanut chew. So there we go. I don't know if you can see how it's hard to see maybe with a dark spatula in the red pan, but it's perfect. It's just glossy and rich and decadent. And there we go. So now I'm going to take my beautiful offset spatula to smooth it out even more. Truth is since we're covering it with peanuts, even if it wasn't perfect, it would be okay, because any kind of glitch the peanut would fill in. Sprinkle it on the top. I'm telling you, people just love when I bring this to the potluck. They disappear faster than anything else. And you know, not when I think about it, a quarter cup might have been a bit too much. I think half a cup might have been too much. A quarter cup might be enough. But hey, I got it. I'm just going to use it. What the heck, right? It's here. I'll just sprinkle it around, move it around, boom, boom, boom. Maybe do what I call the plop and drop. And
the plop and drop.
I call it the plop and drop. And so I have these beautiful peanut chews. I'm going to let them set. Ideally, I'm going to have them in the freezer. And I think people will love them. You know, I want to show you a picture, Chuck, if you don't mind, because I'm sure, like me, you struggled with your food issues from early time in life.
Oh,
and
yeah.
just to prove it, every picture, every picture of me as a child is eating dessert. That's why they're black and white. So from a very young age, and I have them at my sweet 16, at my 21st birthday, I am always eating some kind of candy, cake, cookie, pie, or ice cream. So I still do, but I eat it in a different form. Charles,
I'll tell you what, you know, I'm looking at that and I'm just like reminded that I don't think that, you know, God Almighty created a more delicious combo than peanuts and chocolate together. I mean, there's just something special about that just hits the spot.
I want to show you these cookies I made yesterday on my YouTube channel. These are very low in calorie density, and these are my favorite cookies. These are called Thumprint Cookies, and these take no time to make because they only bake for about 5 minutes, and they only have a couple of ingredients, basically oats, dates, vanilla powder, and the fruit sweetened jam. And these are just really, really delicious too. And kids actually like these a lot. And my favorite would be the raspberry.
Oh, those look absolutely amazing to me. And so here's the deal, guys. Don't forget to put your questions in the comments. We're going to open up the mailbag in just a second. But on page 186 in the book is where you'll find Goodman's Peanut Chews. And then coincidentally, you were talking about the peanut bites. Those are on page 187, along with the PB&J bites, you know, for an even greater treat. So 186 and 187 will be your best friend. And oh my goodness gracious, I can't wait to try this myself.
I just want to show, I mean, I got to thank Hannah Kaminsky. You know, she's a wonderful vegan chef and cookbook author. I believe she was 17 when she published her first vegan cookbook, My Sweet Vegan. And this almost made the cover, but we went with Dr. Barnard's favorite cupcake since he wrote the foreword. But I just love this this picture so much of the trio of desserts that I love this book. So also what I want to say is the nice thing about the hardcover books is they lay flat, and the glossy pages, when you do spill a little bit on it, you hopefully can wipe it off. So a picture with every single recipe. I don't know if you saw the spoon picture, Chuck, the spoon it. A lot of people have been commenting on that particular recipe because it's a very clever picture. Let's see if I can, there it is. This seems to be a picture that a lot of people are talking about.
Oh,
because
that's just beautiful.
It's just one of the most visually, I think I want to get this like just blown up and put on my wall, especially if I become a New York Times bestseller.
Absolutely.
Because I conceived the idea for this picture, and Hannah said, oh, I don't think so. And I look, please try it. And we're so glad she did, because we just love it. So I love this book. I hope you'll love it and use it, because I put a lot of years and heart into this book so that people could enjoy treats. And, you know, I want to tell you something funny, Chuck. So very reluctantly, my friend and mentor, Dr. Alan Goldhammer of the True North Health Center, very reluctantly endorsed it because there are, it is true that it's free of sugar, oil, and salt, but there are ingredients that he would never recommend, like chocolate, like peanut butter. But he wanted the book. He told the publisher, yeah, but you really should call the book Desserts to Die For, but that won't kill you. So that didn't fly. But maybe if I write another book, that would be the title. But these won't kill you. I hope that they will thrill you, and they may even help you, stick to a healthy diet. Because let's face it, I see a lot of people that really struggle to eat healthy. And hey, I didn't go from Coke Slurpees to vegetables for breakfast. I needed some steps along the way, and this is the bill that it fit. I see a lot of times when people fall off plan, they're not falling off to a date nut dessert. They're falling off to, things that are not ostensibly healthy for them. So this might be something that can help you when when the craving hits, and especially with the holidays. I really feel like, oh my God, the fruit. Oh, let me show you. There is so many great things here for the holidays. The fruit cake, for example. Not Your Grandma's fruitcake is just beautiful for holiday fare, and that's very healthy. By the way,
your fruitcake would even please the palate of somebody who's not a fan of fruitcake. I feel like fruitcakes. I mean, it's as divisive as politics. You either are all in for fruitcakes or you're on the other side in the camp of I can't stand it. But something tells me that your fruitcake in this book can actually bring America together. No pressure, AJ. We're just trying to solve the world's problems.
Yeah, I'm looking for the photo, but it is a very, very good, you're right. People either love fruitcake or they here it is, Not Your Grandma's fruitcake. A lot of people like this recipe. It does not taste like the fruitcake that had those sickly, green cherries in it and candied pineapple. It's made of whole fruit. It's actually with pineapple juice is one of the primary ingredients. And the pecan pie, I'm going to show you that. It's made from 2 ingredients. The world's healthiest pecan pie. I'm going to find that in a minute and show you that could be served in a restaurant, as many of these were. I actually have a recipe, Chuck, for the pictures on a different page, but they're called PCRM muffins. And the reason is when Dr. Barnard had a conference in Southern California at the Universal Sheraton in 2010, I remember Dr. McDougall and Dr. Ornish were speakers, and they asked me to cater the desserts. And I made 33 of my German chocolate cakes for that event. And they also wanted a breakfast muffin. So I made these muffins and I called them PCRM muffins in honor of PCRM, but the acronym was also Perfectly Crafted Remarkable Muffins. And so this is a banana chocolate chip muffin that's really, really good. The apple pie is to die for. It's actually called Apple Pie That Won't Make You Die. And probably my favorite recipe in the book is the rustic fruit tart. I make that all the time. It's low calorie density. I always have the crusts ready. I'm looking for here it is. Another great holiday dessert, the pecan pie, 2 ingredients. So a lot of these recipes are very, very simple. And as I said, if a 7-year-old can make them, you probably can too.
Well, let's jump from a 7-year-old to a 74-year-old as we open up the mailbag here. Rich, our bodybuilder friend on YouTube, is watching today, and he says the only problem with date syrup, AJ, is that it colors the item, so if you have to make something that's lighter, you may want to consider maple syrup. It's still natural, and it has more benefits than sugar. So is that something that you account for when it is that you're putting these delicious things together?
He's absolutely right. So, for example, I have a muffin in the book called sweet cornbread muffin, and people love them, but they come out a very light brown instead of yellow. And that is because date syrup is darker, whereas maple syrup is translucent. So as I said earlier, you can substitute one liquid sweetener for another. Now realize this, maple syrup is much more expensive than date syrup, and it's also sweeter. So it's going to affect the recipe slightly, but he is absolutely right that dates are dark. They don't make white dates or vanilla dates yet. They make dates that taste like vanilla. So yeah, he's absolutely right. And that's why you don't see a lot of vanilla frostings in this book. Now, that said, that's date syrup, but date paste is much lighter, because what date paste is dates that have been soaked in water, and that is a very light tan color. So the few frostings that I have, like for the carrot cake, if you'll look at the picture, or for the cinnamon bun cupcakes, those maybe they're not as white as milk white, but they are much lighter. So date paste can make things lighter than date syrup. But remember, date paste is not a liquid. So if you're using date paste, you're going to have to add some liquid to the recipe. But he's absolutely right that date, that's the thing. It is darker.
Speaking of liquid, Zum is watching on YouTube today, wondering if you could talk a little bit more about maybe some delicious desserts or decadent things that we can sip on as opposed to eat. Because you mentioned the Vitamix earlier, which is wonderful for making smoothies and liquids and things like that. But, the food processor, not so much in the liquid territory. But I know that you have a sip on it chapter in the book as well.
I have a whole category called Sip It, with lots of sugar-free drinks. I think there's probably 32 recipes in that category. We broke the category in all kinds of different plant milks. So we've got you covered with that. This is the Sip It category. So instead of having categories like cakes, cookies, pies, we have categories like Sip It, Pop It, Spread It, Sprinkle It, Bake It, Chill It, Dry It, meaning put it in a few recipes in a dehydrator, iron it, a few recipes using a waffle iron, fry it, a few recipes using the air fryer, nuke it, only 2 recipes using the microwave. So plenty of beverages. So one thing I recommend for people that are craving sodas is instead of having a soda with sugar, use a good reduced without sugar, just from the grapes, balsamic vinegar. It comes in many flavors like peach and pineapple and strawberry, lemon, and lime, taking 1 to 2 tablespoons, start with 1, in a glass of either water or club soda, then you feel like you're having, a 7-Up, but instead of having 150 calories, it's like 33 calories. So, there are always ways to reduce or eliminate sugar. I believe that as somebody who's been vegan almost 50 years, anything somebody can make non-vegan, I can make vegan. In almost every recipe, given enough time, I can also make healthy.
All right, a couple of other things in here before we wrap things up. I'm a lemonade fan year round. I think that it's delicious. Page 217, for those of you playing along at home, you have a frozen pink lemonade recipe that is great.
Delicious. And I don't know, Chuck, if where you live you had hot dog on a stick growing up, or maybe now.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. It was featured in this wonderful movie, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and they would be jumping up and down. I used to love their lime lemonade, cherry lime lemonade, and but it was just full of sugar. And so guess what? You can sweeten things with fruit, the whole fruit, and nothing but the whole fruit. And so you need your lemon juice or your lime juice, but using things like grapes or strawberries or raspberries, you can make lemonade, and it tastes just like lemonade, but it's healthy, and you can freeze it and make a slushy out of it. It is delicious to make the strawberry, raspberry, or the grape lemonade, or just the regular. And hey, if you want to put a leaf of kale in it, go ahead.
And then to wrap things up, looking ahead toward the holiday, I can't believe that we're talking about this already, but holiday eggless nog made with one of the ingredients is sweet potatoes. You are just creative. I mean, as creative as it gets.
Yep. Because I love desserts. This is my favorite holiday dessert, the holiday parfait.
Ooh, yes,
I love this dessert so much, and so do other people. And where I live, cranberries are available all year round. Most people don't think to use them in the summer months, but I actually have some in my freezer because I'll make this all year round. But I love holiday desserts. I have a pumpkin pie that's flourless and crustless. So lots of holiday desserts. But and these would be perfect for Santa Claus, because actually Santa needs to eat a little bit lower calorie density. And I think he'd appreciate these cookies.
That is so very accurate, my friend. That is so very accurate. So look, I want all the exam roomies to get on board and help you achieve your goal of becoming a New York Times bestseller. I think that, let me frame this up. There it is. This book is the one to do it. Sweet Indulgence. I mean, we're talking 157 sugar-free recipes naturally sweetened with fruit. I think that you have done the world a great service, Chef AJ, and I am so thrilled and happy for you. And this is just absolutely amazing. And let me close with this. As a food addict, these are all recipes that I would feel comfortable eating. Initially, I mean, I would have been a little bit skeptical as I get on this healthier path, but now 15 years in, I feel like this is really something that even if you are struggling with food addictions and you feel like sweet treats will be the death of you, these will not. They can be your methadone, and they can be your ticket to the healthier future every single day. So thank you as a food addict, for all of us food addicts out there, AJ, coming up with a delicious, decadent way for us to still enjoy and feel satisfied in the kitchen. This is just amazing stuff.
I sent you some cookies one year. Remember, I sent you things in the mail.
You did.
And you didn't go off the rails.
I'm still the same 140-pound guy. I did not go off the rail. I did enjoy the heck out of them, though. Let me tell you what. Yeah. So,
oh, thank you so much, Chuck. And happy birthday tomorrow. And thank you for all the work you do and everyone at PCRM.
Absolutely. And thank you, AJ, again for this wonderful book. There's a link to pick up your copy right now in the show description and in the episode notes. We'll add the link to Walmart. We already dropped that in the chat. We'll get that in the notes for you guys as well. Congrats, AJ. Thanks for everything.
Thank you, everyone. And eat treats that are sweet.